think that we're all going to get some good information about it. Also, Strength for Change will be here present at our SEPAC fair, which is going to be May 24th. So you'll see this coming out in your email, but there are some as well. This is going to be different locations around that are here to help give support. These are just some of the locations that are going to be present at the fair, on top of others that we're going to be adding as we go on throughout the next couple weeks or so. But we're excited we're going to have Strength for Change here and how they can help you with your kiddos. All right, Paul, it's all yours.
Thank you, Melissa. Good evening, everybody. First of all, you guys are troopers coming out on a Thursday night to listen to somebody speak after a long day. My goodness, thank you so much for taking the time to do that. While I don't want to spend the entire time lecturing at you, I usually like to open it up with more of a kinesthetic type of activity. So what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm sorry you all sat down and now we're all comfortable, but I'm actually going to ask you to stand and to face a partner. Like anybody in the room. What do we have? 2, 4, 6, 8. Let's stay out for now. All right. Table me. And what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to ask a question or ask you to do something, and I would just like you to just do that with the person in front of you in a couple of seconds. I'm going to ask you to switch partners so you get to know some new people. So the first thing I want you to do in front of each other is I want you to greet that person that's in front of you in your own special way. Just greet them in your own special way. Go ahead. Excellent, excellent. Sticking with that particular partner, I want you to talk about something that puts you in a state of wonder or awe, something that you really appreciate, that really makes you just stop, take a deep breath and say, wow, that's pretty amazing. Please. I'm sure.
That's always like, wow, man.
I think it is
Excellent. Everybody, switch partners. Pick somebody new that you haven't gotten in front of. Switch partners. So somebody else. All right, with the person in front of you now, I would like you to talk about your family, how many kids you have, what's your, what's going on in the household, how old the kids are, what you got going on. Real brief, go.
My name is Chrissy. I have a son in Copeland, daughter in Dwyer, and my now 11 and
Rachel is so right now. Missouri at the end of June. July, so that should be in our house right now.
I can imagine.
As we are adjusting.
Yeah, are they nervous?
That's not it.
What are you moving for?
Well, so my husband got a job. I got a job out there, but we're really
Slow down.
slow down a bit.
Hey, good for you.
Still doing the same job, still director of special services.
Sticking with the same partner. I want you to talk about your family of origin, your mom and dad and your siblings. Talk about specifically your role within that family dynamic. Were you the prince or the princess? Were you the black sheep? Were you the youngest of men? Were you the caretaker?
So I am 54 years this year. And so I'm one of 14 years old. My brother, my younger brother, my sister. I was the family. I was the one.
sister just a year older, my husband's like 40. So, and I was just like, and my sister pushed me, I knew she paved the way for me, but I was like, she made it a little easier. But, well, yeah, just because she, like, you know, it's always easier on the second child because you don't, you know, it's like they've gone through all the trouble, so you get a little bit more leeway, you know, so. And my brother just had like a free life, you know, he just got to do whatever, yeah, exactly, boy and the baby, yes, exactly. Yeah, so they, yeah, we're just like, whatever, do whatever you want,
I want you to think about the parenting tactics that your parents used to raise you. Talk about those parenting tactics. The goods and the not so goods.
I think so. I think that's right. Now I'm raising my own kids. With the same partner, talk about how your parenting style either differs or is similar, you know, with your parents. Please discuss. So, all right, let's switch partners one more time. Find a new partner. Find someone new.
we have double?
Oh, we can swap.
You want
You
to swap?
go
All
there.
right, let's swap. Okay, we'll swap.
Hello, Kristen, nice to meet you. What was it? I'm Trudy.
I want you to think about, an experience where you felt very proud of something your child did. Share that with the other.
Can you repeat that?
Something you're very proud of.
Lights out. Stuck with it. You're right. Yes.
Alright, with the same person, with your same partner, talk about what makes parenting today more difficult than it was for the previous, well, for our parents' generation. What makes parenting more difficult today than for our parents' generation?
With kids always connected to things that happen. Anybody in the state to put myself in a situation and left there. And now it's which is why fingertips, because everything is always recording.
The conversation's over, please get back to your seat.
Nice to meet everybody, that was fun. That was fun. It always pressure. Alright, I'll join you guys. Sorry, I have like food and flyers and everything going on here.
So, I always like to process these types of activities. You know, I do it for more than just to break the ice and to ease some of the, you know, the initial angst that happens when we come together in these types of venues. But why else do you think I would do an activity like this? I'd love to hear anybody's feedback. And I'm not afraid to call on people.
Because we're making connections with other parents.
Oh, I love that. We're making connections with other parents, exactly. Any other reason?
Lots of differences in parenting styles as well, and I guess what makes you a parent these days.
And the first thing you said was to highlight the different, I didn't hear the
Oh, sorry, highlight differences in parenting, I guess.
Yeah, to highlight the differences in parenting that you may have, sure. Or the similarities that you have, right? Well, another reason why I do it is because I want you to recognize the collective wisdom in the room. You're all experts. you all have an enormous amount of knowledge and experience in working with kids, whether it be working in the school system or being a parent yourself. And you can draw on that collective wisdom. I think one thing different about how society used to be versus how it is now is we're much more individualized. You know, my mom used to tell me about the woman that stuck her head out of the window in the city, and she would have the beat on where all the kids were. It took a village, and they talked about problems, and they shared their problems with each other, and that doesn't always seem to happen, right, because of the culture that we live in. So recognizing that there is wisdom in this room, that there are people that you can consult when you're struggling parentally. You know, I've been a therapist for now nearly 25 years, and I still struggle as a parent. I have 2 children. My daughter's 23, my son is 20. And there are lots of challenges that go into raising children, which is the reason why I stand before you today. By way of introduction, many moons ago, when my daughter was born, I had an epiphany. I said, this young Italian American is not prepared to be a parent. Can't take care of myself, how am I going to take care of anybody else? It was surreal, right? And I was scared. And I also realized that I was raised in a certain way that's very different than how I want to raise my children, right? Wonderful parents, don't get me wrong, but they raised us in a certain way. And I'm the youngest of 4 boys, by the way. It's just some of the things that happened, I didn't want to repeat history, right? Especially with this changing landscape of our own culture, right? So when I came on board with Bernie Ivan at Strength for Change in 2004, he had recently developed relationship-centered parenting, and I devoured it. I became a disciple of it. And now I have the honor of saying that I've trained many, many parents on the model. I do my best to use it myself, right? And I share this with you just to add another tool to your toolbox, right? Like I said, there is collective wisdom. You have experience. Some of the things you're doing are probably fabulous. I want to add to that pool. And maybe have you evaluate some of the things that may need some tweaking, may need some adjusting, right? What I share with you, I'm going to give you a lot of information in a short amount of time. I don't expect you to remember any of it, you know? And as we go forward, remember that we are human, and all we can do is our best. And the more you practice the model, the better you get at it. Like anything else, when you try something new, you stink at it, right? And, you know, I use the analogy that if I go to the gym and I lift twice and I look in the mirror and say, well, how come I'm not shredded yet? You know, there's no shock to that, right? It takes practice, it takes time, and a million times over, if necessary, okay? So, as we begin this journey on relationship-centered parenting, there are some guiding principles that I want you to keep in the back of your mind. And I literally say this to every one of my clients that walks through my doors, or I'm sitting down and talking to parents about some clinical impressions I have for their children. And the first is, if we could do well, we would do well, right? Nobody deliberately tries to fail. Nobody wakes up and says, you know what, I'm really going to annoy my parents today, despite what you may think. I think I'm going to underachieve in school. I'm going to have my English teacher calling my mom about the 27 missing English assignments I have. Nobody wakes up like that. We don't choose failure over success. We don't choose pain over joy. That's simply not the way we're designed. And it's easy to lose sight of this. It's easy to lose sight of the fact that everybody wakes up with good intentions. So if your child is struggling in any way, keep that in the back of your mind. If they're underachieving academically, if they could, they would achieve academically. if they're struggling with handling anxiety and getting worked up over little things, if they could manage their emotions better, they would. There's something roadblocking them. And this leads into principle number 2, and principle number 2 is that the brain is the organ that runs our lives. It is the single most important organ to our mental health and well-being. But very few people pay attention to the squishy little mass that's behind our forehead. It's essential. And like any other organ in the body, it is vulnerable. It's vulnerable to glitches, to dysfunctions. I call them roadblocks. And when people come in through our doors, we assess for 7 different types of roadblocks that somebody could be experiencing. And we try to tailor a plan to help them overcome those roadblocks. So the other thing you need to know is that change is a process. It is not an event. Change takes time and persistence, and in our humanity, we're always vulnerable to falling back. I often say to my clients, relapse is inevitable. And relapse is a return to old behavior. So even if I see somebody doing very, very well and show some great strides, there's always a possibility of backpedaling. In similar vein, if your children are showing some great improvement and all of a sudden, boom, things go haywire, that's part of the process. Relapse is inevitable. So keep these 2 principles in the back of your mind as we go through this. And remember that when you're interacting with them and you feel frustrated, I always bring back to the idea that if we could do well, we would do well. And believe me, sometimes my children drive me to drink. So there are 3 fundamental principles or three main parts of relationship-centered parenting, okay? The first one is the idea of self-mastery. Self-mastery is our ability to exude our will over ourselves. It comes in 3 forms. The first is to do our darndest not to use something we call coercive communication, okay? I'm going to go into coercive communication a little bit. Coercive communication is the use of strong emotions to get other people to do what we want them to do. Now, as you were talking amongst each other, what were the big emotions that your parents used to get you to comply with their will? You can shout them out.
Raise their voice.
They would raise their voice.
Guilt.
Guilt. My mother, the Jedi master of guilt. She's 88 years old, man, and she has a double lightsaber of guilt that she throws at any given moment. Right? If I don't call her every day, if I miss a day, oh, you're alive. I don't have much longer, right? So it's a tactic. It's intended to share and to inspire and motivate you to accommodate their will. So guilt is a big one. I think you were alluding to anger when they raise their voice, right? Anger is the second one, right? What's the third one? Starts with an evidence with ear.
Oh, fear.
Fear, great job, yes. Anger, guilt, and fear are the top 3 emotions that we use to get other people to do what we want them to. They also come in different forms, like lecturing, nagging, storytelling, chronic writing, trying to put them in the right path. You just want to share your infinite wisdom with them. And they should be, in return, be thankful. And on their hands and knees, thanking the good Lord that you've bestowed this infinite wisdom on them, right? So these are ways in which we talk coercively. And we do it in every aspect of our lives. We do it at work, we do it at home, we do it with our kids, we do it with our spouses, we do it on the line at Starbucks, right? If you've ever been to Starbucks in New Jersey, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? You'll be sitting there, and if the attendant or the barista, what are they called?
Yeah,
If the baristas are moving too slowly, you start to see people get impatient, like they'll breathe heavy. Come on. Nobody wants to work nowadays. Nobody wants to work.
COVID did that to everybody, right? And they start talking loud enough for the person to hear. And the message is, I want you to move faster because I want to get my coffee and go to work, right? That is coercive communication. We use it all the time. And with that, there are some pros to it. There are some benefits to using coercive communication. The first being, it works. It can be very, very effective, right? My parents raised 4 of us to be pretty good men. We're not that screwed up, maybe mildly, but it works. The second thing is, it's expedient. You don't have to think about it. It just comes out. Lastly, it's safe. And what I mean by safe is, it's easier to show anger than disappointment, or sadness, or fear, right? So it has some pros to it, but there's some cons as well. And the cons are, if it does not work, it will not work, period. And we have this thing that there are certain types of kids where using this type of communication really isn't effective. That it either A, maintains the problem, or B, inadvertently exacerbates the problem. My son would fall into that category, right? We say that with 80% of the kids, 80% of the time, and that's not a hard, fast statistic, that's just, speculative. It works. But with 20% of the kids, that either maintains or exacerbates the problem. We call these kids 20%ers, right? And I'm sure in your surroundings you've dealt with 20%ers. And unfortunately, coercive communication can really work against you. So with that, I want you to recognize our tendency to use coercive communication. And my hope is by the end of this session, you're going to be more aware of that tendency, and you're going to try to make some adjustments in using that. And by no means are you going to be perfect. I've been doing it for 20 odd years, and I have absolutely lost control on my kids. I've gone old school. So it's not about being perfect, it's about being on your game more times than not. So the first part of self-mastery is being able to avoid coercive communication, okay? The second part of self-mastery is about having a united front with your spouse. And even if you're not together any longer, if you're co-parenting, it's vital to be on the same page. Because what typically happens is if one's too strict and one's too lenient, or one's a go-to and one's not, one's the Disney parent, the other one is the authoritative parent, then what happens is one of you becomes the hero and one of you becomes the villain. And then what that does is it weakens your parental power, your parental influence, right? And it winds up weakening the bond between the two of you, where I've seen it get very, very contentious. Not to say that that's happening here, but if it is, it's a reflection that you're not on the same page parentally. And listen, we're all raised in different walks of life. My mother used a metal spoon. My wife's parents never hit, okay? I got the shit beaten out of me. I'll tell you some stories later on, right? So I was raised like that. And that's my natural tendency, is to be, aggressive and posturing and yell and get red-faced and flame my nostrils, because that's what Italian Americans do. But unfortunately, that often can work against me. And if it's different than my wife's style, it can create tension between us, and obviously they can allow the children to split us, right? So a united front is essential to self-mastery. And then thirdly, has to do with your own mental health. Bear in mind that we are first and foremost role models.
Kids don't listen to what you say anymore. They watch what you do, right? And we need to show them how to be mentally healthy. If we're dealing with our own depression, anxiety, substance abuse problems, if we don't handle stress very well, we're anxiety mongers, or we're, micromanagerial, or we're overly obsessive about things, that compromises our parental influence. And also teaches them how to handle problems, and maybe not the healthiest of ways. So those are the 3 parts of self-mastery. Avoiding coercive communication, being a united front with your co-parent, and making sure that you take care of your own mental health. If any of those things are compromised, it will compromise your ability to parent effectively, right? And there are things you may want to take a look at, as you go forward and want to put your best foot forward parentally. Does this all make sense? Does anybody have any questions or thoughts or reactions to this? Good? Okay. So self-mastery is at the foundation of relationship-centered parenting, right? I'm going to assume that all of you have adequate enough self-mastery, right? And listen, like I said before, it's not about being perfect. There's no such thing as perfection. Somebody once told me there are no perfect people in the world, there are only perfect intentions. Actually, Morgan Freeman said that to Kevin Costner in Robin Hood back in the 80s in that movie. It was a fabulous line. There are no perfect people in the world, there are only perfect intentions, right? So it's not about being perfect, it's about doing your best, right? So the second aspect, and this is kind of the pied de resistance of the model, and this is the strength of the parent-child relationship. You can never put a price on the relationship. Within this section, what I want you to remember is that rules without a relationship equals rebellion. Rules without a relationship equals rebellion. Okay? As part of our protocol when we're seeing new clients, we typically do an assessment that lasts anywhere between 4 and 8 and sometimes even longer sessions. Sometimes people are like, why does the assessment take that long? It becomes a question, and it's a legitimate question. And it's not about collecting more data. We could probably collect enough data to understand what's going on clinically within 2 or 3 sessions. But the reason why it takes so long is because we put an inordinate amount of time in connecting with the people that we're trying to serve. It's through the connection that you have influence, right? Parentally speaking, kids do things because they want to do them, no longer because they have to do them, right? Gone are the days where you were respected as an adult because you were an adult. When we were young, they taught us you respect an adult because they're an adult. Now, and I'm not the one that taught this, I'm not taking blame for this, respect is earned. I hear kids say all the time, like, well, if you don't respect me, I'm not respecting you. Huh? When I was in 7th grade, I walked into the gym class. I was a little ornery, a little mouthy, a little ADHD kid running around, with his hair on fire. And my gym teacher tried to quiet me down, and I kind of told him off. He grabbed me by the neck, threw me into the equipment room, put me up against the wall, and said, don't you ever talk to me like that again, I'll rip you apart. I'm like, that's not what you just did. He goes, good. Tell her what you said, too. So I went home. And I had big crocodile tears coming down my face. I looked very pathetic. I'm like, Mama, somebody has desecrated the sanctity of your son. You have no idea the pain and the suffering I've experienced in that. What do you think the first thing she said was? What'd you do? And then I got hit by her. Now, she may have went the next day and discussed it, but I didn't know about it. right? Those days are gone, right? Those days are long gone. We used to instinctually fear adults simply because they were adults. No more. We've empowered them. And believe it or not, that's actually for the better, but we've empowered kids. So our style has to be different. We need to gain influence. In order for me to be of influence to a client, they have to trust me first, and they have to like me. If they don't like me, and I tell them something that they should be doing differently, bye-bye, right? So I want you to think about it in terms of energy, okay? Remember, too, that when we inadvertently exacerbate the problem, we're reinforcing it negatively, right? So I want to introduce to you something called the Nintendo theory. I found this very, very fascinating, right? And I listened to this person give a lecture on the Nintendo theory, and he posed to the crowd, well, why do video game companies make so much money? Why are this a multi-billion-dollar industry that you can make 27 versions of the same game and more will be sold at each turn? Why does that happen? Well, the answer to that is because video games are built on success, right? You get lots of positive reinforcement every time you do something right. And think about it. You ever play one? There are bells, whistles, larger sizes, different levels. Like, you get coins, you get all sorts of cheats, you get all sorts of things. And it says music. It is just celebrated every time you make a good choice, right? What happens when you do something wrong? Very little, right? There's very little energy. Yeah, maybe you hear a little music, da-da-da. You go back a couple of frames, and you start over, and it's all success, 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 right? You would never see a cyber parent come out when you did something wrong in a video game and be like, Maria, how many times do I have to tell you, you do not use a crossbow in a zombie apocalypse. You get out the semi-automatic right now and start blowing off heads, or I'm going to shut this game off right now. I am telling you. It's gone for a month, Missy. You get it out now. You would never hear a cyber parent say that. Because what would happen? No one would play the game. Like, why are you off the game? I don't know, he's yelling at me all the time. Every time I do something wrong, he's on my back. I'm tired of playing the game. That's what you hear, right? So we want to focus our energy on the positive. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean we ignore the negative. It doesn't mean we let them get away with everything. It means the energy we need to put in really is about the good things that they do. I often tell parents, catch them in the act of doing something good and comment on it, because we don't often do that. Our parenting paradigm is inverted. We like to focus on all the negative things they do, but they don't do that. They didn't empty the dishwasher. That they have no appreciation for all the blood, sweat, and tears that you've put into their life, that you've made their life possible. And they should be grateful, right? And when they don't, it drives you nuts. And you express that through coercive communication, right? So what I encourage you to do is express love often, in an abundance of ways, in every way possible. My wife used to write little notes in their lunch boxes when they were little. I'm so proud of you, I love you. My daughter came home one day, I think she was in 3rd grade. She came in home and said, Dad, I got the Hero Award! I'm like, yes! She's a hero! The Pintos are heroes, baby. What'd you do? She caught a kid that was fainting in choir. She's like, I caught him. And they gave me a hero. They gave him a certificate. So I'm like, that's right, we're heroes. So I really celebrated that. So it's very easy to get caught up on the negative things kids do and forget about the positive. So the more we express love, the more equity we build in the relationship. And as a result, it puts us into a point of influence, right? I'll get into more of that as we go forward with this model. So we have self-mastery at the base. Without self-mastery, without role modeling what it means to be a resilient and an emotionally healthy person, it's compromising our ability. And with our relationship with them, with the changing landscape of our culture, we have to get at them through a different method. The old ways simply aren't working that well anymore. And we do it through our relationship, through our connection. I'll share a brief story with you when I used to work in education. So for 10 years, I worked in Elmwood Park. I was a student assistance counselor in the middle and the high school, which was actually one school, but they were just separated. And there was a young man who was a bit of a scooch. His name was Anthony, okay? And Anthony was everybody's thorn in the side. He would wreak havoc wherever he would go. He was never in class. There were 4 lunch periods. He was in all 4. Only assigned 1, right? He was always a nuisance. Anytime you confronted him, you better be prepared because he was going to tell you off. People dealt with him in one of 2 ways. Either they were going toe-to-toe with him, or they ignored him altogether. There was no in between. He was suspended constantly because he was always acting out. He was always, telling teachers off. He was always posturing and getting angry and wreaking havoc no matter where he went. Everybody was frustrated with Anthony. So I come on and I'm a newbie and I'm excited. I'm like, hey. And they try to warn me, Anthony's he's a terror, he's a holy terror. So I decide I'm going to get to know Anthony. So spend the first 6 months just building my relationship with Anthony. I'd see him, I go, yeah, why don't you come back to my office? Then we'll play some chess, we'll talk. You? Who are you? Right? But eventually he took me up on it. When he wasn't where he was supposed to be, I'm like, listen, VP's around the corner, you better, hightail it out of here and get back to class. Like, come on, I'll walk in, and I would get him to do these things, and he warmed up to me. After a while, he started coming into my office to talk to me, and then I started to learn some things about Anthony. Anthony was one of 6 children. He had 3 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. All 3 older brothers were in jail. Father had skipped town, mom was HIV positive. And the mom would say things to him like, I'm going to die soon and you're going to need to take care of your little sisters. So this young man who was such a terror to so many people was suffering in a real way. But no one would ever know that because he didn't wear that on his sleeve. He acted like Mr. Tough Guy. One day, I hear a whole bunch of ruckus in the cafeteria. And I go walking in because I hear, shh, Mike, get your cuffs. I want you to take out Anthony. I'm like, cuffs? So I go running in, and Mike was our resource officer. And there is this scene where Anthony's on top of one of the lunch tables with 13 staff members around him, all egging him to come down, and he's like, ah! He's just having a ball. And 200 sets of eyes, there were 200 kids in the cafeteria watching Anthony do all this. Nobody can get him down. So my buddy Mike comes rolling in, he has his cuffs ready, and of course, in unison, the entire cafeteria is like, ooh, right? So I walk in, I get Anthony's attention, I go, Anthony, come on. And I turn around and I walk out. And the kid followed me. Everybody was stunned for about 30 seconds, right? And I brought him back into my office, and I'm like, Anthony, he's like, Mr. D, they're always bunching my jobs. I'm like, listen, I gotta prepare you for what's about to happen. We're gonna get bum rushed in like 2 seconds. You gotta stay calm. What do you mean? Next thing you know, everybody comes rushing into my office, right? Anthony has this major reaction. He ends up getting cuffed and taken out of the school. What was interesting was, at the end of the day, I had 3 teachers come into my office that worked with him. And these teachers weren't big fans of old Paulie D, I'll just tell you right away. And I was ready for battle, because they came in, and I thought they were just gonna kind of get on me about how I've enabled Anthony and this is all my fault. I was ready for it. And I wasn't in the mood to be a counselor that day. I was old school Italian American, bring it, right? And they came in, but they weren't like that. I saw tears in their eyes. They were very affected by what happened. And then they looked at me wholeheartedly and they said, how did you do that? And my answer to them was, do what? Like, how'd you get Anthony off the table just by telling him to come on? I'm like, you really need to know the answer to that? The answer is, because I've spent the last 6 months getting to know this kid, getting him to like me, getting him to trust me. He only did that not because he had to, but because he trusted me. And I really feel that the same rules apply in our parenting model. And it's very easy to lose sight of that. Very easy. It's very easy to focus on the negative, to lecture, to nag, to storytell, to yell, to scream, to use anger, guilt, and fear. This is how we're designed, right? So with the strength of the parent-child relationship, it focuses on the love that you share. Express love often. And finally, and I'll get into more detail with this, you want to get in the habit of validating. Validating is an essential skill in the parenting handbook, right? It's a back pocket tool. And I never realized its potential until I started to use it more often. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But that's the second bracket, the strength of the parent-child relationship. Finally, at the top tier of this is effective discipline. In other words, you've heard the proverb, pick and choose your battles. I find that the most frustrating thing I've ever heard. All right, what battles, which ones are worth fighting and which are not? What do you mean pick and, like, that's a very generic term. Oh, you gotta pick and choose your battles. Like, all right, what does that mean? But there's truth to that, right? And you need to get serious on what battles are worth fighting and what aren't. Because if you get on every battlefront, you're going to be divided and you're going to be weary. Right? So those are the three fundamentals of relationship-centered parenting. Self-mastery at the base, the strength of the parent-child relationship, the peer de resistance, expressing that love often, recognizing that it's the relationship that's going to give you influence, and then knowing what to do. Before I move on, any thoughts, feelings, reactions, or questions?
Well, I can totally relate to the whole splitting and the united front issue. Because when my son was younger, that caused a lot of fighting between my spouse and I, because I was too soft and I felt like my husband was too hard. So we were constantly almost at each other's throats, like to blows.
Yeah, it's not an easy negotiation, right? You know, because
and that's one of the things that I actually have made a huge effort on, because my parents were not a united front, and me and my three brothers played them against each other. Oh man, we would like ask one, not get the answer, go to the other one. Like it was just, and it caused just chaos. It just, it was not, and the parents argued, and it was just, so there are times where my husband is 100% wrong, but I'm like, your dad said it, so I'm backing him up because we're a team, and I literally say that out loud with like this big grin on my face, and I'm like,
it kills me.
I'm gonna talk to him later because I 100% disagree with him, but I can't, and I think the kids know that I disagree with him, but I always like, we're a team, and I'm backing up for dad, and he says the same thing about me because I came from a household that was just, the parents were not united.
Which is not,
Yeah, it's so important.
right, so you know firsthand, right?
Yeah.
And when my wife and I were kind of, figuring out how we can get on the same page, and then I was more the aggressive one, and when that would happen, when she would see me get hot, and more often than not, I would get hot when they were disrespectful to her, but then she would come to their rescue, and I'm like, you're sabotaging me, right? And we get into this thing, she's like, no, I'm not, I'm afraid of what you're gonna do. I'm like, I'm not gonna hurt him, I just wanna scare him a little bit. And she's like, no, it's not working out for me, buddy, And on the other side of the coin, my wife, she's someone I would define as the chirping bird that just keeps going and going and repeats herself 65 times, where the kids are like, all right, you said it already, right? And, so she would do that. And so for example, I'm sure you all can relate to this, like she would say, I'm done, many times over. I'm done. I'm done. I am done. I'm done. I am done. I'm done. I'm done. Oh, I am so done. Right? And meanwhile, the kids are banging their heads again. I can't take it anymore. So we both had issues that got in the way of our parenting, right? So I had to ratchet back on my anger and that use of my posturing, and she had to ratchet back on just kind of saying the same thing over and over again to them and letting me, because that's what I was a little bit stronger in that, you know, from that perspective and how to address them without repeating myself and then following through. And we came to that common ground, and it worked out, you know, relatively nicely. The kids aren't that messed up, you know, but they do. But other feedback, any other thoughts or reaction before I move on? We're good? So, the next thing that I want to share with you is to go into a little bit of the specifics of how effective discipline works, okay? So, to keep it simple, and by the way, if you write down our website address, it's strengthforchange.com, all one word. And on the homepage, if you scroll down to nearly the bottom, there are 3 free resources available to you. One of them is the written form of relationship-centered parenting. We both have it in English and Spanish versions. So if you want to brush up on your Spanish, you can download the Spanish version. So take a look at it. It's very comprehensive. And again, this model is intended to be practiced, and you can, we encourage you to read it a couple of times over. It's a 56-page document that literally has the whole model spelled out for you. So you don't just have to get it here as I lecture at you. So when we get to effective discipline, knowing what to do when, we have 2 types of broad categories of the way we intervene. And we use banking terminology, because ultimately what we want to do is increase the equity in our relationship bank account. Going back to rules about a relationship equals rebellion, the more equity we have in our bank account, the more we're going to be at a point of influence. Kids do things because they, want to do them, not because they have to do them. If your bank account is empty and it's constant stress and aggravation, I have often told parents to completely back off and just work on the relationship. Even if kids are failing in school, even if they're, really giving the parents a hard time and talking back, the first and foremost thing you need to do if your relationship is bankrupt is build the connection. It's essential, okay? So within the effective discipline portion, there are deposits and there are withdrawals, okay? Deposits are relationship building. They're intended to add to your relationship bank account, okay? They utilize positive consequences and natural consequences. You're not imposing consequences on them. You're simply reinforcing when they do the right thing, okay? And I'll get into more detail in a second. You're essentially saying yes when you really want to say no. And you're doing it consciously under the guise of wanting to build the relationship, okay? And what's most important about this is you're not concerned about the immediate outcome. You're not concerned about having it change in that moment. It's an investment. So if it works out the way you want it to, you celebrate it like they won the Olympic gold in figure skating. If it doesn't work out, you just revisit. Okay? So that's how deposits work. Then there are withdrawals. Withdrawals can be relationship straining. Okay? They take away from the relationship bank account, but sometimes they are absolutely necessary. Okay? It utilizes not only positive and natural consequences, but also positive parent-imposed consequences. This is where you're drawing the proverbial line in the sand. You're saying you're not walking over this. And if you're in a withdrawal, then your motto's gotta be, I must win. Okay? And you're looking for the immediate response, the immediate action. If it's to empty the dishwasher, it's to empty the dishwasher, right? Now, before I go into the specifics of the modes, there are two modes in each of the categories. I want to illustrate, I want to go back to validation for a second, okay? A great skill to have in your back pocket is reflective validation. Well, what does validation mean? Anybody know?
To confirm what somebody's feeling.
Yes, to confirm, to understand. When we use coercive communication, we are sending a message that you are wrong for the way you feel. You don't mean to be sending that message, but that's the message that gets sent, right? So for example, when my beloved daughter was 16 years old, she walked in the doorway of our hallowed home, the hallowed halls of our home, and she walked in very excitedly, and she says, Dad, bunch of my friends and I are getting a hotel down at Seaside Heights for Memorial Day weekend. We are psyched about it. I'm going to need $275 by tomorrow. And she walked past, right? So my wife was wide-eyed like, oh boy, right? So I said, I'm sorry, honey, but I'm not really, how did I say it? I'm like, I'm not really interested in you going down to, Seaside Heights for a long weekend. I'm certainly not okay with not knowing what the plan is. And number two, I don't want to pony up $275 in cash, without even knowing where that's going from. And regardless of all that, you're absolutely not going to be going down to Seaside Heights. Something to that effect. You would have thought I murdered her cat. She flipped. Now, going back to coercive communication, one of the cons of it too is when you give it, you get it right back. I have trained her well. So she starts screaming at me at the top of her lungs, I'm gonna be a social leper! You are the worst parents on the planet Earth! How could you do this to me? Oh my God, everybody's gonna go there. I'm gonna be stuck here with you. Oh, this is the worst. Now, in my mind, I felt with all the blood, sweat, and tears and devotion and hard work that I put into making her life possible, I kind of expected her to walk in after I said no and said, Father, thank you. I have no words for your ability to hold me accountable and to make me think about things that I didn't think about myself. I love you for that. And even though I'm not okay, I'm saddened about the no, I understand. Unfortunately, that's not what she did. She flipped on me, right? And in that moment, I could have gone right into coercive communication. I could have been like, who do you think you're talking to? Like, shut up. You better stop it right now. Like you're lucky I don't take your car away too. Make your life possible, right? I could have gotten into that. But I didn't. I was particularly on my game this day. And I used reflective validation. And reflective validation is simply understanding where she's coming from. Nobody likes to hear they can't do something they really want to do. Nobody feels like they want to, like they're okay with missing out on something. That doesn't feel good. So that's what I said to her. I said, honey, I would imagine that you're feeling really disappointed right now. And I get it. I understand. And I didn't say anything more than that. She continued to flip on me. She stomped up the stairs. She was banging the door. She called her friends and told them what a jerk I was. That I ruined everything. Right? But I stayed in that mode. I stayed in validation mode. I didn't allow my storm to influence her storm. Because if I would have gone coercive on her, it would have caused an explosion. And I just said, honey, I understand that you're upset. I'd be upset too if my parents told me I couldn't go down to do something really fun. Then she starts bargaining with me. Please, Dad, there'll be football players there. Huh? Wait, was that supposed to make me feel better? No. And I said, listen, I get it. I know you feel safe. I know you feel that this is a no-brainer for you. I get it. I'm just not comfortable with it. You know, not having any supervision, you know, being around in a place that's swarming with cops and where kids are just really loose. I'm just too nervous for you. I'm not comfortable with it. It's not you, it's me. I'm the one that's not comfortable. She begged and she pleaded and she screamed and she cried. She coerced me in every way. I didn't budge. I just stayed in validation mode. So whenever your children are upset, always remember they're allowed to feel the way they feel. It's valid. You may not like it, it may not feel good, and when you just comment on that alone, I get that you're feeling upset right now. I'm sorry you can't go out with your friends, you know, until you finish your 4 missing English assignments. But I'm happy to let you go out when you do. You know, I'm sorry you can't go to practice, but the dishwasher needs to be empty, right? So, using validation is a key pocket tool. The second thing is loving detachment. And if you notice in the example that I just gave you, how was my energy? Calm. It was calm. When you're lovingly detached, you're calm, you're cool, and you're collected. It's kind of like a duck on the water. On the outside, they look very poised, but what's going on underneath the water? Like, my heart was racing, you know, I was clenching my fist, I was gritting my teeth like, I'm gonna kill this child. Like, how dare she? But I didn't show her that. I just validated. And I stayed detached from the circumstance. So those are two really critical tools to use when you're implementing this model. If you walk away with anything today, if you started to validate more and detach more when you want your kids to follow through on something that you expect, you've made a Herculean leap, if that's even a thing.
It's what I need to work on at the moment. My 8-year-old, she tries to manipulate me like 10 minutes before I'm leaving home. Can we go to Five Below? Can we go now? No, we can't go now. And then just, you know, the mood and the attitude and that you get from like not being able to go do something.
Right.
You know, it's, yeah.
Right, and the reaction's disproportionate with what the circumstance is, and that drives you nuts, right? So you simply validate, oh, honey, I know you want to go to Five Below. Unfortunately, I have to go to a really great parenting program so I can learn more effectively. This guy, Paul DePinto from Strength for Change, really dynamic speaker. Love the way he presents, and I can't miss it. Five Below's going to have to wait. All right. So now, within the bracket of effective discipline, there are different modes. Meaning that there are 2 interventions within each mode, okay? Within the deposits, there's something called save your energy mode and relationship mode. And relationship mode is the pied de resistance. It's the go-to. 60 to 80% of your interventions need to be in relationship mode, right? Within the withdrawal section, there's coercive mode and discipline mode. I'll speak to the 2 simple ones first. Save your energy is simply not responding. But you're still saying yes when you want to say no. The young woman, when I was in Elmwood Park, walked out of her house one day dressed inappropriately for school. She wore, first of all, it was an October day that was about 28 degrees. And she had a short skirt on and a small strap, what do they call them?
Like a tank top.
Tank top, thank you. And she goes to school this way, not even with a coat. Her mother says, honey, you're dressed inappropriately for school, you really need to dress warmer. No, I'm good. And she said, okay. That's a classic version of save your energy. Because remember, when you're in a deposit, it's relationship building. you are trying to build your relationship and you're focusing on positive consequences and natural consequences. So she comes to school, and before the vice principal can flag her for being dressed inappropriately for school, some knucklehead pulls the fire alarm. Now it's 28 degrees on an October day, and the whole school has to wait outside for the fire department to clear the building. That's not a quick thing. So I'm monitoring one section of the school, and I see this crowd of kids all shoulder to shoulder. It's like something out of I Am Legend. Remember that with Will Smith? You know? And they were all, you know, like shoulder to shoulder, and I see them doing this, like they're breathing. I'm like, what the heck are they doing? And I go over and I see her in the middle of the circle, like shivering. She's freezing. She's like, Mr. D, when we go back in, please, I gotta call my mother for warmer clothing. I'm like, yeah, no problem. She comes into my office when the building's clear, and she calls her mother. And her mother does the best thing I've ever heard a parent do without me coaching them to do it. So she's like, Mom, like, I need clothes. Can you bring me sweats and a sweatshirt? And she says, honey, I'm really glad that you recognized it was too cold for what you were wearing. I hope you don't make that mistake in the future. Click. I was like, yes! It's like I'm sending her a holiday card. I was beyond myself. That kid never came to dress at school inappropriately again. The next couple days, she had a parka on. She had those big, fluffy moon boots. She's like, hey, Mr. D, let him trip the alarm, baby. And I'm like, good for you, right? So that's an example of savior energy, right? So you can do this for anything. Listen, you need to really like it if you empty the dishwasher, right? If they do it, woohoo! If not, you say nothing. That's an example. It doesn't mean you have to do it for that. And this is what's important. You need to think about, and I encourage parents to write a list of all the frustrating behaviors that your child engages in. Everything. You know, they show unappreciation, they have a bad mouth, they don't do their homework, they don't help out around the house, whatever it is. Write it all down. And then ask yourself, which mode does it go into? And try to work with them in this mode. Okay? The other mode, which needs no explanation, is coercive mode. And that's analogous to saying, just do you. Let it all hang out. Don't worry about it. Sometimes that's important, to just show them your humanity. And do what you do. And if you flip out, you flip out. And the reason why that's included in our model is just to understand and respect our humanity. None of us are perfect. So it actually is a viable option. And if you start to use the model and you avoid it, every now and again when that comes out, it's far more powerful. Make sense? Okay. So the other two modes, I'm going to just explain briefly, but you're better off reading through it on the website to really get a fuller flavor of it. But I'm going to demonstrate it through an example, okay? So, like I said, the peer de resistance is relationship mode. You want 60 to 80% of your interventions to be in this mode, okay? It starts with the invitation, and that's, can I talk to you? Now remember, you're in a deposit, so if they're like, what? Don't talk to them. Walk away. Revisit it. Never mind, we'll talk about it another time. And once they give you the green light, kind of like playing a game of red light, green light. Remember that tag game when you're young? You know, if they show you some nonverbals that they're willing to have this conversation, green light. If not, then don't do it, right? So, same age range as the situation with my daughter wanting to go to Seaside Heights. I even think it was the same year. My daughter gets into a big argument with her best friend, Bianca, right? Story goes like this. Bianca invites Gia to come over at 7 o'clock on one particular evening. Bianca's very excited for Gia to come over. Bianca spends the first part of her day with her boyfriend, and planned on being with Gia for the remainder of the night. Gia thinks, well, she's just gonna wanna be with her boyfriend, so I'm gonna make other plans. But doesn't tell Bianca this. 5 o'clock, Bianca says, gee, I'll be at my house at 7, just meet me there. My daughter, I'm not going to your house, I'm going out with Dom and Nikki. What? This blows up dramatically, right? It becomes like trench warfare. Like, oh my God, you're so annoying, you're such a rat, brother. And you're like, no, you're like, I invited you over, you're supposed to come over, oh, don't make such a big deal out of it, why are you such a, a crazy look? They went at it, it ended up, I'm not talking to you, you're not my friend anymore, I don't want to be around you anymore. Hate you anymore, right? And they stopped talking. Now, in my opinion, my beloved daughter was clearly in the wrong, right? She messed up. But God forbid my daughter apologize for anything. I'm not apologizing to her. So, how am I going to handle this? Well, I decided to handle it through relationship mode, okay? Now, caveat, a little fun fact, Bianca's parents are best friends with my wife and I, right? So there's that, right? Now, we were always very good about not getting involved in the kids' drama, but you know how that goes. You feel a little, and this one, my kid was in the wrong. And I'm not the type to let my kid get away with being in the wrong, right? If they were in the right, I'd defend them, but when they're in the wrong, I'm going to tell them. But I knew that if I got on her about it, she would have fought me on it, like she did with Seaside Heights. So I invited her out to the diner one morning for breakfast. God bless you. And there we were, Pompton Queen Diner on Route 23 in Pompton Plains, and we were eating our Taylor ham, egg, and cheese sandwiches, which are glorious in this neck of the woods, by the way, if you haven't had any. And I said to her, I started out, honey, can I talk to you? Right? Her first reaction, what? Red light or green light? Red. I went, no. She goes, no, Dad, what? I'm looking, like, what's up? I'm like, well, honey, I'd like to talk to you about Bianca. Oh, what? I'm like, we don't have to talk about that. What's about it? No, for real, what? Green light. I said, honey, I start with validation. I totally understand how frustrating things can be between you and Bianca. I totally understand why you think she overreacted to you going to wanting to spend time with Dom and Nikki when she made plans with you. At the same time, honey, she was really looking forward to seeing you, and she felt disrespected because she made plans and was looking forward to seeing you, and you blew them off without even consulting her. I didn't think that was right. And my hope is that you would acknowledge that because you didn't even offer her an apology for it. You just said that she was being a drama queen and annoying. I don't think that was the right way to handle it. Oh, Dad, she's so annoying. You don't even know what she does to me. Oh, my God. And she's such a rat. I know she told you that I was smoking weed. I know it. And she did, but she doesn't know that. Well, it's actually her parents, not my, So I'm like, well, listen, again, I'm not saying that she deserves the apology, but it's the right thing to do. Well, I'm not apologizing. Okay, well, if that's the way you feel, I'll respect your decision. Remember, I'm not concerned with outcome. I'm concerned with the relationship. I hope you make a different choice, because it'd be a shame to end such a beautiful friendship between the two of you. You've been friends for a long time, and I dropped it, okay? Now, a lot of times when you do this mode, it doesn't work, right? It doesn't produce the result that you want. But remember, it's not about the outcome, it's about the relationship, the connection, right? I happened to strike gold with this one. It worked. Next day, she calls me up from school. I'm like, why on the phone? She's like, I just want to let you know. Bianca and I are friends again. We couldn't be mad at each other. Great. Get off the phone. Go back to class. So she made up, and when she got home, I was like, I am so proud of you. One of the hardest things in the world to do is say I'm sorry. I don't know why those words are so difficult, but saying I'm sorry is powerful. And now you said it, and you guys are friends again, it means so much. And listen, not for anything, not that this matters, but we're friends with her parents, and that makes it awkward. You did the right thing. I'm really, really proud of you. So that was an example of what relationship mode looks like, right? So, the other part of it, the other side of that is the discipline mode, okay? Discipline mode is used when you are going to draw the line in the sand, okay? Validation and loving detachment are essential. And you know you're in a discipline mode if you can answer 3 questions. Question number 1, am I ready for the meltdown? Am I ready? Because remember, they were taught they're going to throw a lot of coercive communication at you. Are you ready for it? If the answer is no, don't do it. You're setting yourself up. Question number 2, is it worth the investment if I do it? Question number 3, will I get a return? No, I'm sorry. Question number 3, can I do it more often than not? Can I do this consistently? Because you may have to do it more than once. If the answer is yes to all 3 of those questions, it's a discipline mode. And remember, you're calm, cool, and collected when you do it. So let's say for the sake of argument, you get an email from your child's English teacher that said that there are 4 missing English assignments and that they need to be done in order for her to get, for him or her to get higher than a 27 average for their marking period, right? And they have a really big dance competition coming up on Saturday, and it's Friday. In a discipline mode, you would say, Melissa, I need to talk to you. What, Dad? I got an email from your teacher saying that you have 4 missing English assignments and your grade is potentially, you're going to fail for the marking period. Oh, Dad, she's so annoying. Oh my God, she never puts anything up on, on Power School. Like she misses everything. And her expectations are so ridiculous. I'm so tired of her. Fine, coercive communication, right? Regardless of that, the assignments need to be done. And until they're done, all bets are off. Even if that means you're going to issue dance competition. What? I've been working on this for like 6 months. I can't miss a thing. Honey, I understand. You're frustrated. But the English assignments need to get done. When they're done, I will do whatever you want to get you where you need to be. But if they're not going to be done, then all bets are off until then. The word until is another great tool in the parenting handbook. And that illustrates the idea that we're very used to giving time-based punishments, like you're punished for a month, right? But when you punish with time-based, you're also punishing yourselves, right? We don't want to punish ourselves. We work too hard for that, right? So with that, we want to use the word until. And it doesn't have to be long. If you want to go outside, the dishwasher needs to be empty. Once it's empty, consequence over. You're done. They did it. And that's when you celebrate it like they won the Olympic gold in figure skating, right? You don't use it as an opportunity to coercively communicate. You see, if you just would have done that before, it would have been so easy. I don't know why I have to keep asking you 1,000 times. Don't do that. What you say is great job. Thank you for doing that. I know that was tough for you. Right?
That was tough.
Yeah. It's like pulling out a molar. It's like doing espionage. Right? So that is the bare bones of the model. I know I threw a lot at you in a very short amount of time. Like I said, I don't expect you to remember any of this stuff. I encourage you to read the material that we have online for you. It's really a fabulous model. And again, just to add to your existing pool of knowledge, to have another tool for the toolbox, it's transformative. I've been a disciple of it for 20 plus years, and I buy into it. I use it as often as I can. And of course, in my humanity, I fall from grace like we all do. And always remember, there are no perfect people in the world, there are only perfect intentions. And the fact that you're here right now listening to this middle-aged Italian dude trying to teach you to be a better parent, that just, like, you should be commended for that. You guys are phenomenal for wanting to learn this information. Spread the word, and do the best you can. And of course, if you need anything, I'm a phone call away. I'm happy to share with you any thoughts or ideas that you're struggling with your, particular child or somebody that you're working with. I'm happy to give you any guidance or advice I can give. Any final thoughts, feelings, or reactions before I let you all go?
I just want to pass this on to my spouse. It's just hard because
Yes.
I come to all of these things and I have I'm getting all this wisdom, and then I'm like coaching him in the house like super nanny. I'll say, okay, we shut down, we walk away, don't instigate the meltdown or whatever, you're going back and forth like him and stuff. So it's so hard because I come back with all this information, but then I can't get him to do it, or I have to do it in
And
real
it's really,
time.
how do you get the husbands to go to this?
Yeah.
So,
This live stream, yes, so it will be on our YouTube, and
this thing came out, is that bad?
I have no idea, but now.
We don't know.
You've been really loud.
I think I kicked
No, I actually,
It was
I did get on
What?
live, and it did.
in my ADHD, I think I kicked that accidentally.
It's okay.
That's
You're right, because I listened, I checked it over here, and I was like, okay, good parent. But,
So-
definitely it will be online,
Oh,
but
that's
I
great.
also think, and, being a mom myself, as I said, of 2 middle school kids, and having obviously a very big conversation recently with our children about moving, right? That was a very big conversation with an 8th grader and a 5th grader, right? So listening to some of the things Paul was saying, I was like, oh my gosh, I actually did that part correctly, because I don't, right? I am the coercive parent, I feel like, as I was listening to this. But what I'm planning to do with this information is take the advantage of going out on a date night with my husband and sitting down and saying, this is what I went and I learned about, and this, because you can't do it in all the craziness of life and in the house, right? So even if it's, let's go for a walk and go sit down at a lake somewhere and just sit and talk about it, because it is really great information, but we all have kids, and it is hard to get out of the house, both of you at the same time. Totally get it, but, that's my personal plan of just, these are some of the things that were brought up, and how can we work together so that as we are, as we are moving into the high school years and the later middle school years with our younger one, we are on that same page and doing the same things. That's personally how I'm gonna
That's
do
a good
it, but it's
idea.
also online, so you're right.
That's a
it's
good
great
idea,
opportunity.
good point.
Pull it up,
Just here, watch it.
Because I think that'll help.
Sorry.
Okay, I was just saying, I just think that will help with the United Front thing too,
Yeah.
because then you both have that information.
Sure.
I know it's a little bit harder to actually sort of do it one-on-one with children, I guess, but for me, I'm just wondering if there's any sort of resources or that you can do with the children, like, in elementary school or in primary school. There's a lot of support and guidance on how to get them to, get along and mingle and understand other people's personalities and how to deal with that. And I've really found for my 11-year-old that now that she's in middle school, it's a lot harder to do that. So, and I just think if there's more resources for them on how to deal with situations. I know they've got the guidance counsellors and that, but more presentations like this that's more directed at them, that will probably help. I've certainly found from elementary up to middle school, there is more one-on-one support, but there's just not those tools, I guess, in the toolbox.
And to speak to that, I think a lot of schools gravitate towards social and emotional learning, and they incorporate it into the curriculum. So you might not be able to see it overtly, but there's a lot of it's interwoven within the curriculum. Melissa, you can speak more to that. But in terms of specific resources, I think that it's very limited. It's hard to get people, like, I know for me, like, coming out, this is a treat for me to come out and speak, but with my work schedule, it's often very hard to come out during the school day to come and speak and do those sorts of things. They are out there. They're in piecemeal, but I don't really know anything specific that I can guide you. Kim Gross, she's a young therapist at Strength for Change. And getting back to the conversation with regards to husbands, just bear in mind, men are like children, and you can do a relationship mode with them too. Honey, can I talk to you? Oh, come on, can't I just have my beer and watch the hockey game? The Devils and the Rangers are playing. Honey, I understand you want to play. You wanna watch the game.
I will say, and I think it could speak for an Italian American too. If an Italian man who can change from the way that you were probably brought up, I mean, it's, you know, I grew up in a yelling household, and I always say that I married someone in between Mary Poppins and Laura Ingalls. And then there was me, and when she had to correct some of the things that I was brought up doing, it's just eye-opening. But having those conversations in a private conversation, having a united front like I hear you say you do, and sometimes it's hard, but it's absolutely possible, and this is a great way to, you know, and validating from someone who, as we grew up, metal spoons, wood spoon, you know, it's a thing.
It is a thing.
We could change.
It was a thing.
Anyone could certainly change.
My mother had a progression, so it started with the wooden spoon, and then my dad's fraternity model was on the wall. No, but she's literally, like.
And I know from personal experience how badly those paddles hurt.
It's funny, like you had this
Wow.
escalation.
But Kim will be here at our fair as well, so if over the next month there are things that you are thinking about, or that you might want to see what Strength for Change might have as an option for you as well, for some supports, that might also be a good opportunity to have some of those more private conversations with Kim, and she can fill you in. But thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming and listening and taking time out of your day.
Yes,
It's not
thank you
easy
for
to
being
do,
here.
so it's very much appreciated.
Thank you for listening.
Have a blessed evening.
Take
care, enjoy the rest of the school year.
My husband watched
this Unless the Devils are playing. I mean, they made it through.
Is that-
So,
we're back this fall.
maybe tomorrow morning.